All right, piss and vinegar day one, two something. I can't remember. 215 some shit. I can't remember. It's fucking getting out of hand. I can't remember. I think it's been 3 months now, pretty much. No, not quite. Well, basically, yeah, like almost 3 months, like 85 days or 88 days or some shit since my bicep surgery. And I'm starting to progressively overload more and more on my left arm. I think this week I could start actually adding some like progressive overload bicep work. And yeah, it's taken a long time to get this arm back because I'm not genetically inclined to have much muscle or hold muscle. And this has actually gave me sort of a perspective on something recently. As I've said, I've been thinking about experimenting with more sets to failure and see what I can how much total work volume I can get away with while retrospectively also going to failure. I will never do reps in reserve because it's boring and gay. But I don't think we need to take the gospel of Mike Menser and Dorian Yates literally when these guys are on steroids and genetic freaks. When you are on steroids, your protein synthesis is heightened for longer. And granted, you can only do so many sets before eventually you're doing redundant volume. Like you're just breaking down the muscle tissues beyond what they need to recover, because basically there's a difference between adding proteins to your muscle myofibrillars and then just muscle damage. Like you could induce protein synthesis that would last weeks if you did fucking 20 sets to failure on bicep curls, but fucking 17 of those sets wouldn't have given you any muscle growth. They'd only have broken down the muscle tissue to the point where you can't then train it with as much frequency, and thus it's fucking redundant volume, especially when you're training it to failure. So at the same time, I'm not going to be doing too much. I'm just going to be experimenting to see how many sets I can go do to failure once a week. And I think it'd probably be about 4 to 5 sets, maybe 6, depending on the muscle group and other parameters. Fuck, I've lost what I was going to talk about. But okay, here the point is, that's the first experiment that I'm going to be inducing into the next, training bulk when I'm fully recovered and I can train optimally. Is more sets to failure and see how much volume I can get away with before I stop progressively overloading or start producing tendon pains, etc. The other thing I'll be doing is adding, like maintenance dosages of protein synthesis. So what I mean by that is it's very obvious to me that I atrophy really quickly based off my injury. I atrophied so fucking hard compared to the average person, just because my muscles don't, my body doesn't like having muscles. I have shit genetics, but also, based off this, I started looking into the research on muscle atrophy. Muscle atrophy induces way fucking quicker than you think it would, because the reality is, and I didn't realize this myself, but a lot of people don't realize this, is you're either gaining muscle or you're losing muscle. There's no in-between state. You're either anabolic or catabolic. You're not like, fucking neutral abolic. Like you can't, as soon as that initial valuable protein synthesis is over, the protein synthesis that is inducing extra proteins added to your myofibrillars, not just protein synthesis that's repairing the muscle tissues. Once that's over, anywhere between 48 to 72 hours of that valuable protein synthesis, then you're losing muscle at a slower rate, but you are losing muscle. And everyone's losing it at different rates. I lose it fast as fuck, obvious, by my surgery and my genetics. Obviously, the surgery is an extra component because the metabolic stress on my arm and my body was, I'm going to lose muscle quicker then. But either way, it's very apparent that I lose muscle quicker than the average person. And yes, after 3 to 4 days after training, you are losing muscle because you're going to atrophy, especially if you're well adapted. If you're new to training, probably not as much. But if you have a bunch of muscle in your frame that, based off evolution and your genetics, you don't fucking need it, your body's getting rid of it. And at different rates. My rate's quick. So, idea for me is muscles that don't have overlap, like, front delts where you're training them, indirectly all the time. Muscles like back and chest, I'm going to start doing a maintenance dose of exercise every 4 days, basically. So when I do my next bulk and after I'm recovered and shit, let's say I'm doing chest on Monday, I do, as many recoverable sets to failure as I can, and then 4 to 5 days later, probably more like 4 days, because that's typically when you start to atrophy again, like, I'll be adding just a maintenance dose of exercise to hold on to protein synthesis. Like, just enough exercise that I don't necessarily get any gains from it. I'm not going to failure necessarily, but like 1 or 2 reps in reserve, 1 set, just to basically induce protein synthesis. So I'm no longer atrophying, because again, you have two states, and I want to be in that anabolic state, that protein synthesized state, and it's going to be a maintenance dose. But the thing is, if you do 6 sets of chest on Monday, by the time Wednesday, Thursday gets around, you're atrophying again. So let's say you got, I don't know, just throw a random number at it. You gained 50%, whatever the fuck, muscle mass from that chest session. But then by Thursday, you're atrophying. And then by the following Monday, when you hit chest again, you lost 10 to 15, 20% of that gains, right? That could mean a huge fucking difference in gains on a yearly basis if you're getting 10 to 20% less gains, or whatever the fuck number it is, based off the fact that there's a certain amount of time before you hit chest or whatever muscle again, you are atrophying. So the idea is that Thursday, let's say I'm doing legs. At the end of legs, I just do, you know, a set of fucking dumbbell press or some shit with a rep or two in reserve. So it's not so stimulating that I'm going to break down my connective tissues or burn out my central nervous system. And then that way, when I get back to Monday again and train chest properly, I'm not ready to train, which will then fuck everything up anyway, because then I won't be able to recruit maximal motor neurons, and that will just fuck away my training. So just enough dosage that I maintain, basically. So I'm going to do that with chest, and I'm going to do that with back, because shoulders, for example, there's plenty of indirect maintenance stimulus you get anyway. More than maintenance stimulus, really. That's part of why when I switched to training, high-intensity training, one of the biggest things to grow on me was my shoulders, because when you're doing chest day, your front delts and side delts are getting relatively stimulated from bench presses and pressing exercises, especially incline presses exercises, which I like to do a lot. So what was happening is I was just fucking severely overtrained in my front delt, because they were getting trained indirectly heaps. On back day, you train side delts. On chest day, you train front delts. And then on shoulders day, you're training it up. And it's just too much, way too much. So shoulders, they won't need a maintenance dose. Forearms probably won't need a maintenance dose. Actually, they should, because I wear straps every time I train. So my forearms don't get indirectly stimulated at all, because I'm always wearing straps. So forearms, 4 days later from here, it'd probably be maybe legs or back or shoulders day. I don't know what day it would be. I would do a set of forearm curls and wrist extensions with a rep or two in reserve for a maintenance dose. So basically, any muscle that I'm not indirectly stimulating significantly from other training days, I'm going to add a maintenance dose. And I'm going to see what that does for my gains. Because my arms, for example, grow really quickly, which is partially genetics, but also I think it's partially because your arms get indirectly stimulated a fuck ton from presses and pull downs. Whereas legs, for example, almost never get stimulated. But then at the same time, are you doing decently high intense cardio, in which case then the legs are fine. We also stand on our legs all day, or some of us do, so that's a maintenance dose of intensity and protein synthesis. So anyway, the idea is, the other experiment I'm going to be running is maintenance dose of basically protein synthesis inducing exercise to make sure that I'm never atrophying. And it'll be a fine line between too much stimulus on those maintenance days, so it's going to be something where I have to kind of be careful with it. But that's training in general. You can't just go by the fucking studies. Like you have to base. You're training around your own individual fucking needs. Everyone recovers different. Everyone progresses different. Everyone needs different things. So, yeah, that's what I'm going to be trying to see if it can blow up my torso, which is fucking kind of a hard place for me to grow. Anyway, peace out. Bye.